Sometimes I wonder, why am I different? And sometimes I think, am I really alone in all of this? Why am I so angry? Why am I so upset? Do you ever get embarrassed? Do you ever feel unloved? Do you ever feel unwanted? Do you ever feel rejected? Sometimes I wonder why I'm so different.
Living Waters, good to see you guys. I want to mention a couple of things to you, and then we're going to wrap up our series on OUTCAST. But two things. First of all, if you're a guest with us first time today, thanks so much for coming. Or if you've been coming for several weeks, we want to invite you immediately following this worship experience right outside the doors to the left. You'll see a big sign there that says Newcomer Connect. It's real informal, but our pastors and our elders are going to be there. We would love to introduce ourselves to you and just to get to know who you are. And like I said, take about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And we'd just love to meet you. So please be sure, if you're new here today and you're our guest, or if you've been coming for a little while, please be sure to stop by there immediately following this service. And then 2 weeks from today is Mother's Day. We love Mother's Day at Living Waters. It's a big deal, and we're going to honor all of our moms in a couple of weeks. But we're going to do something a little bit different. Typically, Mother's Day has always been that time where we honor all the moms like we're going to do, but usually we do something like, at least the church I grew up in, we'd always give them a rose or a carnation, and here for the last several years we've done things like give them books or a CD or bookmarks or different things. Last year we did something good. We just gave them wedding cake. We're like, here's some cake, and but we really felt in our heart that we wanted to do something different, and so you saw the video announcement that said Go Purple. And so what we're asking everybody to do is on that day, wear something purple. If you want to join in, join us. It'll be a lot of fun. But wear something purple that day. And it's to show our support for the Immokalee Pregnancy Center and just how we love and appreciate their ministry. It's a ministry that reaches out to young girls, to pregnant, unwed moms, and we want to show our support to them. So we're asking everybody to wear purple that day. And on Mother's Day this year, we're doing it a little bit different. We're not going to be giving out a book. We're not going to be doing wedding cake. We're not going to be doing a carnation or a rose. We're going to honor all of our moms. But the money that we normally would spend to do those different things, we're going to donate to the Immokalee Pregnancy Center instead for pregnant moms. If you get upset about that and you just desperately need a carnation, come see me. I'll give you a carnation, okay? But it'll really be a cool time. If you don't know Diane Hansen, she is the director of the Immokalee Pregnancy Center, and she attends our church, was here last service. So I called her a few days ago, and I was like, hey, would you be okay if we gave you several $1,000s? And she's like, yes, So anyway, it's going to be really cool. Well, appreciate Pastor Daniel last week and his ministry here while Christy and I were out of town. And Christy and I had a great time. I tell you something cool that happened is 2 weeks ago, we were here and we were telling you that we were going to be going to a missions event in Georgia called Difference Makers. And Difference Makers is the organization, one of the two organizations that we're using for our church planning efforts through the Imagine Spiritual Initiative, which you guys are tearing it up on. You are rocking it out on Imagine, and we got some cool things going on there, and really moving, it really at a very accelerated pace with the Target situation. And when I say Target, some of you mean like the Bullseye Target? No, the Target, the former Target building here in Bonita, really moving quick on that. So that's really, really good, and we have some good updates for you here in the near future. But anyways, I had mentioned to you that we were going to take a $10,000 check out to Difference Makers, this missions organization that's helping us with church planning. And so we had a guy that was in our service second service 2 weeks ago, and he actually was in and he heard me talk about it, and it was his first time here, but he said, you know what, I feel like I'm supposed to be a part of that. And he said, I'm going to match the $10,000. So I ended up taking a check for $20,000 out to Difference Makers. So pretty cool stuff. But while we were out last week, Christy and I, we preached, we went to the missions event, and then while I was in Georgia, I had a buddy ask if I would come and preach in his church, and so I ended up doing that for the weekend. But he picked us up. Well, we were going to meet him last Saturday night for dinner, and when we walked out of the hotel, I looked over, and to my left, I was like, I know that guy. And I looked over, and Christy was like, I know that guy. And we looked over, and just a few feet away, he was checking in, but it was Evander Holyfield. And I'm like, man, that's good. And I'm not a guy that gets starstruck. You know what I mean? I've never been that way. I've never really got starstruck like Ashley Young. Ashley Young, our youth pastor's wife, it's like, if they're like on a, kitty commercial or something like that, she's like, oh, I mean, it's just a big deal, But I've never been like real starstruck, but I was so starstruck, and I just saw him, and I wanted to go over there, but I didn't want to go over and shake his hand or introduce myself or anything like that. Seriously, I wanted to go over there, and all I could think in my head was I wanted to go over there and just say, hey, can I take a look at your ear? That's the only thing I could think of is I want to see his ear, man. I don't want to meet him. I want to take a look at the ear, man, that Mike Tyson got a bite of, I mean, that was the only thing that I could think of. And so, anyway, we had a great time. And I want to talk today a little bit. We're going to wrap up our series called OUTCAST. And today I want to talk about overcoming loneliness. Let me just ask you this question. Have you ever battled loneliness before? Statistically, 1 in 4 people here, according to a recent study that was done, 1 in 4 people even here today, in America today, feel extreme feelings of loneliness or are really going through a bout of loneliness. I'm sure if you're not in that place right now, at some point in your life you will be, because it's one of those things that impacts everybody at some time or another. And deep down inside, there's a desire that we all have. God created us that way. God created us with a desire that only He could meet and only He could fulfill. But deep down inside, there's a desire that we all have to be wanted, to be cared for, to be accepted and not be lonely, but to have relationships and friendships. And it's such a big deal. And as a matter of fact, God knew it was a really, really big deal. In Genesis chapter 2, remember one of the first things that God said? He said, it's not good for man to be alone. He knew the importance of us having friendships and us being around one another in community. And so deep down we have that desire, but yet there are those moments in life where we really go through that time of loneliness. And I'll just open up a little bit here and give you kind of a sneak peek behind the curtains of Ed Ivie's life. But I've shared a little bit before, but, I've always this is my Achilles heel. Depression and loneliness are kind of my Achilles heel. I struggle in these areas, and God, I'm so grateful that God has so generously been so good to me over the last few years and just helped me overcome so many of these feelings and all that. But if there's something that the enemy would really poke at me on in my life, it would be this area of loneliness. And you say, well, Pastor Ed, that doesn't make any sense because, you pastor, I believe, the greatest church in the state. I mean, you pastor a great church. You're surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of people. You've all got all kind of people that are friends and all those different. See, you can be around a lot of people, and even in a setting like this today, you can be surrounded by people and still be lonely and still have those feelings of loneliness. And so I understand this. I understand feelings of loneliness. And one of the big things, I'm not saying that my feelings are always right, because a lot of times my feelings have lied to me. And I have felt lonely when I didn't need to feel lonely. But it's kind of the crutch that has been in my life that I've kind of leaned on when I shouldn't have at times, where I feel those feelings of loneliness. And, there are a lot of things that cause feelings of loneliness. One of the things, at least for me, one of the things that causes loneliness for me is insecurity. It's not being secure. And a lot of I'm a doer. I don't know, type A personality, I'm a doer. I don't feel like things are going great in life unless I am accomplishing something. You know, there's a difference between being and doing, and as Christ followers, it's more important for us to be than to do. You know what I mean? But I'm a doer. I want to work. I want to do something. I want to accomplish something. That's just the way God wired me. And so there are those times when I don't feel like I'm accomplishing or doing something or moving forward, that the loneliness comes in. I feel insecure, like I'm not good for anything, or I'm not accomplishing anything great in life. And so the enemy brings that at me, in that feeling of insecurity. And then, you know, breakups or relationship breakups or divorce. That's something that for so many today cause feelings of loneliness. It's really impacted them. Grief, you know, when there's been some type of a loss. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe it's the loss of something that you've had. But loss creates that as well. And I'll tell you a big one is past rejection. Maybe somebody rejected you in your past. Maybe it was a mom or a dad or a brother or sister or aunt or uncle or, you know, whoever that is. But maybe somebody in your past rejected you, and you carry those feelings of rejection into your other relationships, and then they just cause you to feel isolated. And I'll tell you a real big one that causes loneliness is a sinful lifestyle. When we live in a sinful place and we're living a sinful lifestyle, it creates those feelings of alienations. And as a result of those feelings of loneliness, there are all kinds of effects that they have on us. One of the things that happens is that we end up having a perceived stress. And listen to these words I'm using. A perceived stress. Not a real stress, but a perceived stress. Because see, what loneliness does is loneliness tends to make everything so much bigger than what it is. Because you have time to be all by yourself, you're kind of all alone, you're kind of sitting in that place, and you feel like nobody cares, nobody understands, nobody knows what I'm going through. And so you end up looking at all the things that are going on in your life, and you fixate on them, and it just makes them seem so much larger. And then they get bigger, and the bigger they get, the more stressful you become. But it's a perceived stress. You guys tracking with me? It's a perceived stress. You don't have to be that stressed out. It's because of how you're looking at things. It's a perceived thing that's happening in your life. And I'll tell you another big effect, and this is the one I'm not real hip on right now, is do you realize that loneliness speeds up the aging process? I'm in my 40s now. I don't like that. Things are already changing for me drastically. I'm looking at menus now and having to hold them 5 feet away from me. You know, things are changing. My body's changing. I mean, things, you know, my energy levels are changing. My blazing Flash Gordon, you know, quick reflexes are changing. I mean, things are happening to me, and I don't want anything to help speed up the process. I don't need anything to come along and speed that up more than what is already happening. But loneliness does that. Loneliness also creates kind of, it hurts our health. You know, there are all kinds of studies that show that loneliness affects our health. It causes us to be depressed. And when we feel that way, here, you know what I'm talking about. What we then try to do is we begin to try to fill those areas of loneliness. We try to begin to fill those voids with all kind of other things. You may be in a relationship that really went bad or went sour, or you know, maybe it was a divorce or something, and so you feel lonely. So what do? You jump right back into another bad relationship. Or you jump into an addiction, or you jump into a habit, or you start listening to old country songs, or you start listening to the old Elvis songs. Are you lonesome today? And you think that they make you feel better, but they make you feel worse. You go to all these things and you have the big old pity party. Or you do what so many people are doing today. You go to social media. Facebook. Boy, I ought to be able to find a friend in Facebook. I remember when several years ago, I had people, do you have Facebook yet, Ed? Do you have Facebook? No, I don't have Facebook yet. I don't know what Facebook is. You got to get a Facebook. You got to get a Facebook. I'm like, you can be connected to all kind of people all over the world. I'm thinking, I for sure don't want a Facebook then, you know. That's not a good selling point for me. But anyway, finally I got a Facebook, and I was like, this is cool, you know, because then all of a sudden I started, you know, I was in contact with old college buddies and friends from high school and all these people that, you know, that I used to know. All of a sudden I had all these different friends, and you know, I would update my status, and I was connected. But, you know, one of the things that has happened, this was an interesting article I read this past week, is that social media, especially Facebook, you're so densely connected to so many people, but yet loneliness is greater than ever before among Americans. And do you know why? Because it's things like that that create loneliness. You say, I'm so connected, but yet I'm lonely. You know why? Let me tell you why. It's because you update your status. I'm going to Carvel to get me some chocolate ice cream. And then you sit at Carvel eating your chocolate ice cream, or Dairy Queen eating your chocolate ice cream, and all you're doing on your phone is hitting refresh. I hope somebody likes the fact that I'm eating chocolate ice cream right now. Somebody like me. Like me. Somebody comment. Don't get it on your shirt. Finally, I have a friend. Somebody commented. Somebody, no, nobody's commented. Nobody's liked the fact that I got, a new pair of shoes. Nobody likes that I got a new blouse. Nobody likes that I got new glasses. And let me just keep hitting. It's been 3 hours and nobody said anything to me yet. We Facebook our life away just hoping desperately somebody will say something to us. You know why? Because there's a void. There's a void. There's a desire that we have. And so I want to talk about that. How do we overcome that? How do we overcome those feelings of loneliness? I want to look at probably the biggest outcast of the Bible. The greatest outcast of the Bible. And he was a guy that understood loneliness. He understood what it meant to have everybody leave him, to have his friends leave him, and to have his own people turn their back on him. And really, this outcast is a guy by the name of Jesus. Jesus was an outcast among the people of his time. I mean, think about it. All the people that he hung out with. When it came down to the end of his life, and after his 3 years of ministry, they all turned their backs and took off. His own people hated him to the point where they crucified him. It wasn't just the Romans, it wasn't just his enemies, but it was the religious crowd, the church people, that couldn't stand him also. And can you just imagine the feelings of loneliness that Jesus felt at different moments? How he would have felt. How did Jesus overcome those things? And you say, well, did he really experience them? Well, yeah, Hebrews tells us that we have a high priest, that we have somebody who intercedes, a high priest who is on our behalf, and our high priest has been through everything that we've been through. He understands temptation because he's experienced temptation. He understands loneliness because he's experienced loneliness. He understands the emotions and the feelings that are all associated with the things. Now, he never gave in to them, but he understands those things and how they feel. And so Jesus, in John chapter 16, we've got a great story. It's Jesus kind of towards the end of his ministry life, and he's getting ready to face the cross and getting ready to face that incredibly grueling time for him. And he has this conversation in John chapter 16. And let me just paraphrase for you, and then we're going to look at verse 32. But he basically says this. He gathers his disciples together, and he says to them, he says, guys, here's the deal. I'm going to be with you for a little while. And I'm with you now, but the time is coming. I'm not going to be with you. I'm not going to be with you because I've come from my Father and I'm going back to my Father. But listen, I'm going to be coming back. I'm going to be coming back. Now, do you catch it? Do you understand what I'm saying? And the disciples, they, kind of pull over off to themselves a little bit, and they're kind of over to the side talking, and they literally say things like this, like, well, what's Jesus talking about? What in the world is he saying? He's just speaking so figuratively. He speaks in all these riddles, and he speaks, I don't understand. And so Jesus, standing over here, he perceives their thoughts. He knows what they're saying, and he says, guys, let me say it again, because evidently you don't understand what I'm saying. So let me say it again. I'm with you now, but the time is coming when I'm not going to be with you like this. I'm not going to be with you. And I'm going to leave, but I'm going to come back. And I want you to know this so that when these things happen, it's not going to catch you off guard. And then they're over here, and because the disciples don't want to look stupid to Jesus, they still don't catch it. They still don't understand. But they look over and they say to Jesus, okay, now we understand. Oh, okay, well, now you're not speaking figuratively anymore. Now we understand. And Jesus knew they still weren't catching it. And Jesus in that moment, he could have felt so lonely, because think about it. Here are these guys that have been with him for more than 3 years. They've seen the ministry. They've heard the teaching about the kingdom. They've heard all the different things. They've seen the miracles, all these different things. And they still don't understand. And it's actually, when you look in this passage, they say this. They say, now we get it. And Jesus says to them, now? You mean it's been 3 years and you were just now getting it? Look what it says in verse 32. Verse 32, it says, Jesus says to them, he says, guys, listen, a time is coming, and in fact has come when you will be scattered, each to your own home. Guys, a time is coming when they're going to come and they're going to take me away, and all you guys are going to be running around like cowards on the school playground running away from the bully. And here's the deal, you're going to leave me all alone. But what Jesus did in overcoming loneliness, I want you to see this first principle, is Jesus spoke truth to himself. Jesus spoke truth because he said, this is going to happen. You're each going to run, scatter to your own home. You're going to leave me alone, yet I am not alone because my Father is with me. Jesus spoke truth. He spoke truth into his life. He had immunized his life with truth. He was truth. And so he had spoken, because in those critical moments when we feel lonely and we feel like the world is against us and we feel unwanted and we feel uncared for, we have got to have something in our life that is immunizing us or keeping us from preventing us from feeling or giving into those feelings. For Jesus, it would have been so easy for him to settle into those feelings of, well, you guys don't even get it. My closest friends, you're going to leave me, you're going to abandon me, I'm just going to sit around and have a pity party. But Jesus didn't do that. Jesus didn't do, he spoke truth to himself. He said, you guys may leave me, but the truth is, I'm not alone. Let me just say this. In your loneliness, you may feel alone, but you're not alone. I've had those moments and that I've shared in the past, some of my own struggles, where I felt completely alienated, completely alone and isolated, like nobody understood. Nobody understood anything that I was going through, dealing with any of that. But I want to tell you that in those moments, as I reflect back, as I look back over kind of the spiritual landscape of my life, I'm able to look back, and you know what I'm able to see? That I was never alone. God was quiet, but I was never alone. I was never by myself. And so that helps me now in overcoming loneliness, so that when these feelings come and the tendencies come to say, well, you know, nobody cares, nobody understands, nobody knows the stuff that I'm going through, that I'm dealing with, when those times come along, I say, hey, you know what? Let me speak a little truth here. The truth is, I am not alone. I'm not alone, regardless. And so Jesus, then we pick up the story in Matthew chapter 26, because now Jesus goes to the garden to pray. Right before his ordeal, Jesus goes in Matthew chapter 26. And here's the second thing that Jesus did, is Jesus reached out to God. Jesus spoke truth to himself. And secondly, Jesus reached out to God to overcome his loneliness. Verse number 36, Matthew 26. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Guys, stay right here. Listen, stay right here. This is the critical part. You hear these words, sorrow. I feel the sorrow to the point of death, Jesus is saying. This is just all over me. And more than ever before, I need your friendship. More than any other time, I need you to watch with me. I need to take the closest crowd with me. And I need you to pay attention and really stay in here with me. Going a little farther, he fell on his face to the ground and prayed. My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. You know what this tells me? This tells me that people will let you down. Jesus he takes Peter, James, and John, his three closest friends, in the moment of crisis, in the most critical moment of Jesus' life, the Son of God, at the most critical, overwhelming, sorrowful time that he's going through, these three guys are asleep on the clock. People are going to let you down. Let me just tell you something. Get ready. I don't want this to catch you off guard. But family members will let you down. At some point, that we're fallible individuals. We do stuff wrong. There are times that we mess up, and your husband's going to let you down sometimes. Your wife is going to let you down sometimes. Your kids may let you down sometimes. You may have a trusted leader that may let you down sometimes. Your pastors may let you down sometimes. Friends may let you down. Even close friends, they may let you down Sometimes people, it's just the nature of people. They don't mean to. It's not their intention. It's just people. It's people. And we get so upset about people that let us down, and I think to myself sometimes, oh man, how many times have I let somebody down? Whew, that's a bigger thought. People are going to let you down. But Jesus in this moment, and we see it later on, what Jesus did, Jesus didn't even get upset with these guys. He tried to wake them up, and then he went back, and they were still asleep, and then finally he's just like, let them sleep. And he went right back to the Father, and he reached out to God. When you're feeling lonely, let me tell you how to overcome it. Reach out to God. Reach out to Him. Be honest with Him. Lord, this is how I feel. If you were here several weeks ago, you remember me saying this. If you're here new today, I was sharing a little bit about how our feelings can deceive us. It's just a feeling. And Jesus understood that. It's just a feeling. And Jesus reached out to God. He understood that he was feeling these emotions to sorrow to the point of death. Overwhelming sorrow to the point of death. But yet he reached out to God. And so that's my challenge to you today. If you feel that isolation, reach out to God. And then just finally, look what Jesus did. Jesus stayed fixed on the mission. The other morning, I had all this kind of stirring around in my heart and just have been praying through all of this and reading some of the scriptures and stuff. And I woke up and I was in that twilight time. And in that twilight time, this scripture came to me in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. And let me say that again. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Do you know why Jesus was able to overcome those feelings of loneliness? Because he had his eyes fixed on the mission at hand. Jesus didn't allow himself to be distracted by the emotions. I want you to catch this. He didn't allow himself to be distracted by the emotions and the feelings because he knew it was just a feeling. Or what the temptation was going to say, the temptation that nobody's around, everybody's deserted me, my own friends, my family, the people that are supposed to be on my side. He didn't give in to any of that. For the joy set before him, Hebrews says, he endured the cross. He had a bigger picture in mind. And that's the challenge to every single person here that battles loneliness or will experience loneliness at some point, is keep your eyes lifted up. Keep your eyes fixed and focused ahead. That there's a greater thing, that God has a plan and a destiny for every single person here. Don't allow the enemy, or your circumstances to keep you so fixated on the problems or how you're feeling or the emotions or all of those things to keep you from seeing the great thing that God has for you down the road. For the joy set before him, you know what the joy was? Let me tell you what the joy was for Jesus. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. You know what the joy was? The joy was the fact that Jesus was willing to experience isolation and loneliness for the joy of us never having to. So that you and I would never have to experience that. So that we would never have one period in our life where we wondered if anyone was around. We never, listen, as a follower of Christ, as a follower of Jesus, we never, ever have to wonder if there's somebody there. We never have to say those words, nobody's around, nobody cares, nobody understands, nobody knows what I'm dealing with, we never, if we say them, they're not true. If we say them, it's a lie. Because Jesus delayed his feelings so that for the joy set before him, we could experience that life with him and never ever have to feel lonely again. He made a way to the Father so that you and I could always have complete and total access. And so my challenge to you is to look up and look ahead. To look up and look ahead. If you would just stop looking at some of the things around you and realize that there are some great things that God has for your life. And also if you would reach out to God. Eric, come on up if you would. If you would reach out to God. Reach out to him. He's desiring. You know, I really believe that today there's some of you that may be dealing with this area. And if you... And God is here. God is here today. Jesus is here today. He's Emmanuel, God with us. That Jesus is here today. And I think if we could see spiritually, if we could just, peel back the layers from our physical eyes, and we could see with our spiritual eyes, here's what we would see. We would see Jesus walking up and down this front, back and forth in these aisles. We would see him walking in and out of the rows. And he's just looking for somebody who will invite him in. He's just looking for an invitation, somebody to reach out to him and say, Lord, I feel lonely. And he's right there. He's right there in that moment if you'll reach out to him. And here's the last thing I want to encourage you to do, is to reach out to others. Reach out to others. Well, nobody wants to be around me. You don't know. Reach out to somebody. And that's the hardest thing to do because we believe all these things that aren't true. Well, if I reach out to somebody, what if they reject me again? What if I reach out to somebody? What if they don't accept me? What if I reach out to somebody and I don't make a friend? Well, try again. Go again. That's why community groups are so critical. So important here for us at Living Waters. Next week we begin our sign-up process. I mean, and if this is an area for you that you struggle with, you should be one of the first ones to jump in and say, man, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to do something. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to reach out. I'm not going to stay in this place of loneliness. I'm going to lift up my eyes. I'm going to reach out to God, and I'm going to reach out to others because there are other people who are feeling the same way you are. There are other people that feel just like you do here today. And so I want to encourage you to reach out. And in all of this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, is it's an option. You got to choose to do it. You can do one of two things. You can hear the message today and you can say, okay, that's really good. And you can go out to your car and you can still feel lonely. And you can still go to bed tonight. You can still feel those, feelings of loneliness and isolation and try to sleep throughout the night and just struggle. I mean, you can do all those things and nothing impact you. Or you can make a decision right now, right here, like Jesus, to say, you know what? I'm going to start speaking a little truth to myself. I'm not alone. Some of you just need to tell the enemy that today. I'm not alone. You're trying to make me think that I'm alone, but the truth is, I am not alone. Even if I'm the one that's messed up, I'm not alone. Jesus comes to me in my life, even when I'm not right. Even when there are things that I've done that's created the isolation and created the separation and created the loneliness, Jesus still, because of his grace and God's mercy, he still is right there in that moment with you, regardless. He's still right there. So speak some truth. I'm not alone. And I'm going to reach out to God today, and I'm going to make a decision that I'm going to choose to move forward. I'm going to choose that I'm not going to be alone. I'm not going to allow this to hinder me anymore. I'm not going to stay in this place. I'm not going to stay in this mindset. Hebrews tells us that he will never leave you or forsake you. Listen, either the word of God is true or it's not. Either we accept it as true or we accept it and it's just a big lie. I want to tell you, the word of God is true. Jesus said, listen, he will never leave you. He will never forsake you. But you've got to choose to believe. You've got to choose to take that step forward in him. Here's what I want to do. We're going to mix it up a little bit today. I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I want to encourage, if you would, take out your connection card. Most of you received that connection card. And take it out with me. And here's what I want to challenge you to do. If you don't have a connection card, then you can kind of process and play along here as I share. But here's my encouragement to you. We're going to take about 30 seconds. I'm just going to sit down and we're just going to listen. And we're just going to ask the Lord. Here's what we're going to do. For the next 30 seconds, we're just going to ask the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to take away from this message? There might have just been one thing. I know I've said a lot today, but just take the one thing. There might be one thing that you've heard today that really resonated with you. Would you write that down on your connection card and say, here's my next step? Or if you don't have that connection card, you can just kind of close your eyes and just process and say, here's the thing that I'm going to do next as a result of this message today. Even if I'm not feeling lonely, even if I'm not, when the moment comes, I'm going to know what to do, and here's what I'm going to do. So just for about 30 seconds, let's just process and allow the Lord to speak to us as far as what our next step is and how we move forward in that. So you can close your eyes if you want to, or you can write it down there on your connection card, my next step is. And just allow the Lord to speak to you a little bit for about 30 seconds, all right? Lord, there are times that I feel so lonely, but I thank you that you took upon yourself my loneliness on the cross. You died on the cross so that I would never have to feel lonely again. You died on the cross so that I would never be alone again. And so today I just ask you to remove these feelings that are lying to me, because you said that you will always be there. And so today I reach out to you. I reach out to you, and I'm going to reach out to others, and I'm going to take a step. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to stay wallowing around in self-pity, and I'm not going to stay in this place and live my life stressed out. I'm going to live my life with freedom. I'm going to live my life with passion and know that God's got great things in store for me. And so today, I'm just closing that door. I'm not going to give any place to the enemy anymore. I'm not going to allow him to bring this stuff into my life or try to make me believe things that aren't true. Lord, you care about me and you love me, and today you wrap your arms around me and you draw me in. Even though other people may let me down, even though I may feel some of these things, Lord, I choose today. I make a decision that I am going to overcome loneliness and do the same things that you did. I'm going to speak truth, and I'm going to reach out, and I'm going to fix my eyes on the things that are ahead. Thank you for what you've done in my life today, in Jesus' name. And everybody said amen.